Hey everyone, it's Emily Heinz. I am the founder and managing director of EntryPoint. We are a nonprofit research organization that focuses on delivering research insights and helping organizations craft more effective programming to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem across the Midwest. And so today we are venturing into the world of digital. To bring you a little bit of a video on how you can utilize data to craft more effective programs. I think right now, considering it is currently day 15 of the coronavirus stay inside period of time, and so for an extreme introvert or extreme extrovert, I am starting to get a little stir crazy. And I think during this time, it's also making us at EntryPoint realize how really critical having data and data accessible about your the community that you're serving to crafting programs, especially in times of crisis. So all of the organizations that we work with and the community that we serve is small businesses and tech startups. And so a lot of these organizations that serve the same community are reaching out to us to request data to help them craft programs to help those companies during this time. And so I think that it would be helpful to kind of walk you guys through our process in how we do what we do to hopefully help you guys in figuring out how better to support the entrepreneurial community during this time. So, small disclaimer, if two small children run in here at any time or you hear some sort of crying in the background, the crying is probably my husband, but I will just keep on filming because that is the world we live in currently. So, okay, so let's go into it. So we're located in Michigan, and one of the reasons why I feel like people should really care about what's going on in the world right now is that Michigan, for instance, is the 10th largest state landmass and population-wise in the country, and we are currently the 4th highest in number of confirmed cases of COVID-19. And so we are on a shelter-in-place order right now, and that's having a very large effect on all businesses, but small businesses in particular. So in Michigan, 89% of all organizations have under 25 employees, and the average size is 21, actually. So when small businesses are affected by something like coronavirus or a recession or whatever else may come, that affects everybody. That's not just a problem over there, that's a problem all over the place. So for organizations that start small businesses, for organizations that serve small businesses and startups and are looking to craft programs to support that community during this time, I think it's a really critical time for making sure that you are being very careful about the programs you're crafting. I think we saw a lot of programs during the recession that started in 2008 that were crafted that then a few years later people were like, oh, that could have been done a little bit better. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, but I think that really utilizing data and making these decisions and being very careful in crafting the program is something that's going to have a lot of impact over the next couple months and couple years, and will have a lasting impact on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We can see in the data about the tech community in particular, the large impact that any of those entrepreneurial support programs and investment programs that were created by the state of Michigan or by the local economic development organizations or foundations to support businesses during that time, like that impact you saw last for years and is still having a large impact on the community today. So I think we have to be very careful in making these decisions. However, broadly, I feel like shouldn't everybody be making decisions based on facts and facts that come from a reputable source? I think that's kind of like the top of everyone's mind recently, that people are like, oh yeah, it's funny when you make decisions based on real information. So let's get to the tips. So the first area is what data to collect. And I should preface this by saying that this full article will be posted on our website, EntryPointMI.com. So I'm going to kind of skim over things just to make sure that we don't have a 35-minute video, but you can look at in detail and certainly reach out to ask questions about this. My email address is emily@entrypointmi.com, and so that you can get additional information. So you want to think first about what data to collect. You wanted to base research and programs on your strategic plan and what your goals are. So you want to define what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And then that's how you develop key questions that you want answered by the research, and how you start looking at how you're going to create programming. And you want to really think about the end goal. Like, what is the point of all of this? The point of collecting information and putting together some real research pieces. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to start creating a benchmark year after year? Are you trying to create a very specific program? Are you trying to design a program? Or are you trying to determine what the best strategy is for your organization moving forward? So then, after you kind of determine, based on your strategic plan and your goals, what data to collect, you want to figure out how to collect the data. So you want to identify a specific audience, and you want to make sure that you really need to collect data from an accurate, consistent, and complete audience. So think about who you can get the data from. And you want to say you don't want to get the data from whoever will give it to you. You want to make sure that you have audience criteria of exactly who fits within the scope of the research report you're putting together, because that's how you get consistent data. So you don't want, if you're saying, surveying CEOs of companies, survey, people that work at tech companies, survey people that own restaurants, survey sources of capital, venture capitalists, angel investors. Don't just say investors, because it's a little bit nebulous, and you want to make sure that every investor or every entrepreneur or every small business or person within a certain geographic location or sector, that's defined very clearly. And then you want to make sure that your audience, that you are able to capture 100% of that audience. So you really think through at the start of things how large your audience is going to be, and if there's a way that you can collect information from a place where maybe it's a smaller audience, it's a little bit more reachable. Then you want to make sure your audience understands the scope of the report and projected outcomes. Sometimes this can take quite a while, and sometimes it's that you're able to utilize the right advocate and it happens quickly. So for instance, you want to make sure that once you've defined your audience, that you can explain to them what you're doing, why you're doing it, why it's important, why it's valuable to them. Otherwise, they will not prioritize the time to give you any information. So you... and you can also utilize, a lot of times I utilize advocates, and this is sort of, so let's say you were doing a project with a lot of foundations, and there is one particular foundation that you as an economic development organization are trying to serve the foundation community, and there's one foundation where there's a leader there that every other foundation will listen to, or Council for Michigan Foundations, or the similar foundation membership organization in another state. You can have that organization really be the voice for you, of helping you get the message across about what you're doing, why you're doing it, why it's valuable for that community, and that they are behind this initiative. And a lot of times, if you get that right person to deliver that message, everyone was like, oh, got it. Okay, will do. And especially if the survey that you're going to send out or the ask that you're making of your survey audience is, or of your audience is pretty concise, that you're asking them to do something that'll take 10, 15 minutes, that can be pretty easy. Or if it's of a lot of value to them, it can be longer. So you kind of have to balance the length, the amount of time you're asking for with the value that it'll bring them. Because I say all this because you want to get a high response rate. So the more responses you can get and the more accurate responses you can get, the better quality your end result will be. And because you really want to collect complete data. So if you end up finding there are gaps in the data because certain people weren't able to supply it for you, either talking to them or doing some further advocacy around explaining to them why you need the data, or go to other sources in order to get that information, but you really need a complete data set. And then source the best in the industry. I do really like using national sources or other reputable sources that are a good benchmark to compare and contrast the information you're collecting with. So when you say our trend is, it has gone up 50% in 5 years, if that means a lot more if you are able to compare it to a different region and say nationally that's only gone up 25%. So actually we're pretty good, or actually we're pretty terrible. And then once you kind of have, done your surveying, collected your information, made sure it was complete, you want to just verify all of the data that you've collected. Make sure that you're comparing one person's answers to another that might have be working in a similar realm, because you want to make sure that before you start the research, you're using quality data. And then make meaning of everything. So a lot of times what we like to do is we will pull together all the information and we'll analyze it in a lot of different ways and sort of see what the picture that emerges looks like. So we'll pull averages, we'll pull sums, we'll do like regressions, we'll do look at the total number of this, look at the total number of this in this sector or that sector, or how many sectors are there, or what's the total capital that was raised by these people, how does that compare to the total capital raised by these other people, and you'll sort of start to see a picture of trends emerge. And so I always say, like, you use both sides of your brain. So if you have a good data analyst, you really want them to also be really creative. And I think like both of those things are how you really pull together a meaningful, comprehensive picture of the community that you're trying to serve. And you want to avoid cherry picking. So I really encourage people, try to keep an open mind when you're doing this research to let the picture emerge versus trying to make a certain picture emerge by leaving out certain pieces of information and including other pieces of information that paint the picture that you are hoping to get. But then you also want to avoid just publishing all the things. There's a lot of things that you could have additional context on that you can then focus on in subsequent pieces as you roll out the research. You might be using it for a very specific immediate program, let's say to deal with the current situation that's happening globally, or you might want to, but like in a month from now, it might change slightly and you'll want to focus on it as a different subset of the information, and you can kind of roll things out that way. Okay, and communicating results, two things that I will say it's really important, particularly if it's an external report, that you have a good writer and a good graphic designer, because publishing, like pulling together all this data and doing all this analysis, if your organization or you are the only one that can understand and digest the information, it's not as valuable. If you can pull it together and you can push it back out to the community that you're serving and say, here's a look at the community, and that all people are able to access that information and really digest it, So we do a number of reports. We actually have a research report on Detroit's entrepreneurial ecosystem coming out on April 1st. So we're not sleeping. And because that is in 2 days. So for instance, so this is the Detroit report we did last year. You can see it's something that people would be like, okay, like I really want to look at what's going on in there because that looks aesthetically pleasing. And we present, you know, graphs in a way that people can really easily read, and we write with the goal in mind that we want this information is not just for, you know, data analysts. It's for everybody that would be interested in understanding what's going on in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Detroit. We also will do graphs in a lot of different ways, you know, bar graphs, pie charts. You also want to do like some infographics. So we'll do, you know, some of this so that people can kind of like see a picture, and because a lot of people think a lot of different ways. And then the writing is just really, really important in making sure that you're putting things in context for people and really speaking in not just a lot of technical terms, but explaining terms as part of it so that it's really an educational piece. And then crafting programs. So in your research, if you are doing a comprehensive piece, you will see that there are a variety of gaps, that there might be weaknesses in various pieces of the community that you're serving. And those are the things that you don't want to just leave out of the report. Those are really the things that you're going to be crafting programming around. Those are the things that you'll want to, you know, really look at harder and say, why is that happening? And now what do we need to do about those things to address those things? Some weaknesses might just be because your community doesn't have a core competency in that area. You know, you can't focus on everything. And so I think like doing a comprehensive report really helps you understand what's going to have a big impact versus a small impact. And you want to think small and large. So when you're thinking about programming, developing a really comprehensive, and just like you'd create a comprehensive research piece, you would also create comprehensive programming around achieving your goal. So there could be things like, you know, small social events that are more connecting the dots for people within that community so that they can go forward and do what they need to do. Or there's things as complex as very large scale, you know, infrastructure support programs where you're really helping, you're putting millions and millions of dollars to work to support the community and try to address that gap. And I think there is a big place for both things. Not everything needs to be multi-million-dollar program. I think there needs to be like a really good balance between both of those things. And then this is coming last, but this is the most important thing, is talk to your community. So after you've sort of developed this research piece, and the research piece is as unbiased as you can possibly make it, and you have some ideas about programming, you should go to the people that you're developing the programming for and go to them. And, you know, you can do focus groups. There's tons of information about how best to do a focus group. You can do one-on-one conversations. You can talk to people that are sort of leaders within those communities. You can talk to people that, you know, you have seen be in this community for a really long time, and get a lot of different opinions, but make sure that those opinions are within the community you're trying to serve and are not just talking about the community you're trying to serve because they view themselves as a subject matter expert about that, even though they're not in that community, or they're not people that are sort of would be interested in getting into the community. There's some space for things like that, but I think if you really want your audience to be the community that you're focused on now, not the community you'd hope to be focusing on, and not the community that thinks that they know everything about the community that you're focused on. So really talk to your audience and see what it is that when they look at the data and they look at the weak spots and they can speak anecdotally about what do they think would help them in addressing some of these opportunities for improvement. So with that, please go to, especially if you're in Michigan, we have a number of reports from outside of Michigan, but I would say Michigan's our core focus area currently. I would encourage you to go to our website, EntryPointMI.com, and see a lot of the reports that we've done. We do a lot of research on the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the small business community, and if you're particularly if you're crafting a program and you don't have time to do the research yourself, there's a lot of information there. We're getting a lot of requests for data right now from different organizations, and so I think looking at that can still be very helpful, and looking at an independent report a lot of times can be just very helpful in crafting a program based on data and facts. So I hope you guys are all staying inside and staying well, and I will see you all soon.